What if everything we've been told about healthy eating is just wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical idea that for some people, a diet built around meat could be the answer to our modern health crisis. We'll look at the science, the case studies, and the controversy. Let's get into it. So before we can even talk about a solution, we have to get our heads around the scale of the problem. And right now, in the United States, we are facing a massive health crisis that's all about our metabolism. And one condition in particular is just out of control. Just take a second and look at this number, 98 million. That's not a typo. That's how many adults in America have pre-diabetes. We're talking more than 1 out of every 3 people. This isn't some fringe issue, it's a full-blown silent epidemic. And here's the part that's truly terrifying. It's happening in the dark. According to Ovadia Heart Health, fewer than 10% of those 98 million people even know they have it. Think about that. Millions of people are on a direct path to type 2 diabetes, and they have absolutely no idea. Okay, so if the problem is this massive, you gotta ask, right? Is the standard advice we're all getting even working? This is where our sources really start to poke holes in the official dietary guidelines we've been taught for decades. So let's take a look at that standard advice. This here is the UK's Eat Well Guide, but honestly, it looks pretty much the same in most Western countries. And what do you see? The biggest sections, by far, more than half of your plate are supposed to be starchy foods, fruits, and vegetables. This is the healthy, balanced diet we've all been told to follow. And this is where the logic starts to feel a little, well, weird. This quote from a paper in Diabetes and Primary Care just hits the nail on the head. If type 2 diabetes is literally a disease where your body can't handle glucose, why would the primary recommendation be to eat a diet packed with the very foods that turn into glucose? It's a fantastic question. You know, this really boils down to 2 completely different ways of seeing the problem. For decades, the mainstream view is that dietary fat and cholesterol are the villains. But this alternative idea, the carbohydrate insulin model, says, nope, you're looking in the wrong place. It argues that the real issue is excess insulin, and the primary driver of insulin is, you guessed it, carbohydrate. So if you start to lean into that alternative idea that carbs are the problem, then what's the solution? Well, the sources we're digging into today propose something pretty drastic. They say you have to flip the entire food pyramid on its head. And this is what that looks like. It's the total opposite of that Eat Well guide, right? The foundation here isn't bread and pasta. It's meat, fish, eggs, animal protein, and animal fats. The whole idea is to completely change the fuel source that your body runs on. Now, there's a name for this approach. It's called a very low carbohydrate diet, or a ketogenic diet. The goal is simple. You cut your carb intake so low, we're talking under 50 grams a day, that your body can't run on glucose anymore. It's forced to switch to its backup generator, and that backup fuel is fat. This metabolic state is called ketosis. Okay, so that's the theory, but does any of this actually work for real people with real diseases? Well, let's take a look at a fascinating case series that just came out, focusing on people with a really tough condition, inflammatory bowel disease. So check this out. This is from a study published in the journal Frontiers. They found 10 patients with severe inflammatory bowel disease, a truly debilitating condition, and put them on a carnivore ketogenic diet. The result? I mean, just look at this graphic. Every single one of them, all 10, achieved clinical remission. That's astounding. And we're not just talking about some numbers on a lab report. This chart shows their quality of life scores. Before the diet, the average score was 95. While on the diet, 216. It more than doubled. Just try to imagine what that means for someone's day-to-day existence. But really, nothing tells the story like the words of the patients themselves. Listen to this from a 62-year-old man who'd been diagnosed with Crohn's disease when he was 30. He said, "A keto carnivore diet let me forget that I have Crohn's. No drugs, no surgery. The decades that I dealt with Crohn's are like another lifetime." I mean, wow, another lifetime. That is just incredible. Okay, so when you see results like that, the obvious next question is, how? How on earth is this happening? There has to be some biology to back this up. So let's get into the proposed mechanisms that might be at play here. It all seems to start deep in our gut, with these things called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs for short. Now, one of these in particular, a molecule called butyrate, is like superfuel for the cells in your colon. It's absolutely essential for a healthy gut.
And for decades, the scientific playbook said there was only one way to make it. Your gut bacteria had to ferment dietary fiber. Which, of course, leads to a massive, glaring question, right? If you go on a diet with practically zero fiber, what happens? Does your colon just starve? According to all the conventional wisdom, it should be a total disaster for your gut health. But is it? Well, this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. A recent case study is suggesting our bodies are way more adaptable than we give them credit for. It turns out your gut microbiome can actually pivot. Certain bacteria can start making that crucial butyrate from fat instead of fiber. Others can make different SCFAs from protein. And get this, your body can also just bypass that system entirely and send ketones directly to your colon cells for energy. So maybe, just maybe, you don't need all that fiber after all. And that's not all. The IBD study points to a couple of other powerful factors going on. First, the state of ketosis itself. One of the main ketones your body makes is a powerful signaling molecule that directly reduces inflammation. And second, for someone with a severely damaged gut, like in Crohn's disease, just taking all that fiber out might give the gut the rest it needs to finally heal. So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, you've got this huge health crisis, official advice that seems to be failing a lot of people, and then these incredible new case studies. It really feels like we might be at a major tipping point in how we think about the connection between food and disease. So, what's the big takeaway here? The argument from the sources we've looked at today is this. For some people with some chronic conditions, these inflammatory and metabolic diseases, a radical restriction of carbohydrates could be an incredibly powerful therapeutic tool. It's about fundamentally altering your gut biology and dialing down inflammation from the inside out. And all of this leaves us with one big, thought-provoking question for the future. Are these rigid, one-size-fits-all dietary guidelines, are they just obsolete? In an age where we talk so much about personalized medicine, shouldn't we be talking about personalized nutrition too? Something to think about.